But first today, I want to ask you a question. This is a genuine question. Do you think the Water Corporation here in WA needs a makeover? Now, the reason I ask you that is because a lot of these questions must be troubling the bureaucrats who run the Water Corp, because they clearly think an advertising campaign designed to show them in a warm, fuzzy light is needed to make everyone feel better about those who work at the Water Corp and what it does with your hard-earned money. Now, I know that because this morning I can tell you that such is the level of concern about the Water Corp's image that the water gurus have been having meetings with one of Perth's leading advertising companies, a mob called the Brand Agency. And they asked the Brand Agency to figure out what it could do to turn the Water Corp into a positive news story, or what they refer to as a rebranding exercise. The Brand Agency did some homework, put their creative minds to the task, and came up with some ideas. And then along came the minister. Now, here's where the story really is in need of some positive press. When the minister found out and discovered the dribblers at Water Corp had already spent $148,000 of taxpayers' money working on a plan to make themselves look good, he got cold feet. Cold, wet feet, no doubt. Now, Dave Kelly, the minister, has been in a bit of strife in the past, hasn't he? You might recall just over 3 years ago he wanted to launch a state government takeover of almost 20% of WA's rock lobster industry. Well, that went down quicker than the Titanic. He's also responsible as Forestry Minister for a total ban on logging in WA native forests without any credible scientific evidence and zero economic or social impact assessments. So Minister Kelly knows a thing or two about bad press and a rotten image. I'm guessing, and I'm only guessing, but I'm guessing that when he saw this plan at the Water Corp, he thought, well, it's only been a week since I single-handedly introduced changes for garden bores across Perth and Peel without any scientific rationale or logic, and with bore owners and reticulation businesses, horticultural industry very unhappy with me, I better not indulge the Water Corp with an expensive, self-indulgent ad campaign. So he shut it down. The end result, or the bottom line, as State Treasury would say, is a spend of $148,000 for absolutely nothing. Dave Kelly's opposition number is David Honey. He's the Shadow Water Minister. Joins us on the program this morning. David, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Liam, and good morning to your listeners.
Water Corp thinks it needs rebranding, David. What do you think?
Yeah, look, a colleague did humorously suggest this could be the next Watergate, Liam, but we won't go there. Look, it's a vanity exercise, isn't it, for Water Corp to do something like that? They're a public monopoly. We have no choice but to use Water Corp. You can't use another provider.
No.
Why it would even enter their head to want to spend this money is absolutely beyond me.
Well, let's think about that for a moment. I mean, why would they think they're on the nose?
Well, one of the reasons they might think they're on the nose, Liam, is that water in Western Australia is unnecessarily expensive. I mean, we think of Water Corp, I think most people think of Water Corp as providing an essential service. In fact, Water Corp makes more than $1 billion profit off metropolitan water users. $1 billion, Liam. That's $1,000 per household profit. On average for the water services. So, it's high cost, it's unnecessarily high cost water. And as he said, whilst it might not have been Water Corp, but I suspect the proximity to that pointless water bore decision was probably something that exercised the minister's mind at least.
Mm. David, how do these things work? You know a bit about this sort of stuff from the top down. What level of autonomy do the bosses have in these statutory authorities?
Look, quite a lot, Liam. I mean, these are public corporations, so essentially the government is 100% shareholder, but otherwise this business runs itself. But if you were going to go down the path of rebranding, I mean, that's something the minister has to know about. So it's up to the CEO of Water Corp to keep the minister in the loop and inform the loop. I mean, it would make you worry a little bit that the CEO doesn't think they have to inform the minister about this. We're not quite sure how the minister found out, but maybe there's not the degree of control there that there should be in that department from the minister. Maybe they just don't think they have to let the minister know about these things.
I'm just wondering what the rules are about discretionary spending. What is an acceptable discretionary amount? I mean, obviously they've got up to $148,000. Is there a ceiling in that sense?
Look, not that I'm aware of, Liam. I mean, there'll be operational expenses and other expenses, that would run into the, tens of millions or hundreds of millions, and the minister wouldn't approve those. But as I said, when it comes down to something like this, a vanity exercise of rebranding, absolutely the CEO should be checking that with the minister and saying, Minister, what do you think about this? Look, at the end of the day, the government's 100% shareholder, and they would want to know about this before it happened, and they'd have to give their tick as well. So why you'd commence that exercise without letting the minister know, I'm not sure.
Well, that's another question. I'll just read you from the very, very short statement the minister gave us. Clearly, the minister doesn't want to come on air and discuss it publicly, tell people what's really going on. But it says, and I quote, "When the minister became aware of the project, he advised he did not support it, as he didn't see any value in it for customers, and the project was terminated." But of course, David, by that time they'd already spent $148,000.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, Liam, how much they were intending to spend on the whole exercise. That'd be an interesting question, wouldn't it? And look, good that the minister knocked it on the head. But this is a time when corporations waste this sort of money. You look at it as across all the water customers, you might say, oh well, it's not so much. But you've got households now who are literally making the decision between paying the mortgage and buying the kids' school shoes or buying food. And, it's a really tough time. You'd know from the stories you hear from your listeners, Liam, a lot of households are really struggling. Why any government or public corporation that's a complete monopoly would embark on this exercise is utterly beyond me. I mean, they should be working out how do they provide lower cost services to the public of Western Australia, because the only thing we see from this corporation and the government, because they're the ones that run it, again, year on year, 2.5% increases in water prices coming at households who are already, on their knees in terms of cost of living and the likelihood that mortgage rates are going to go up even further.
Well, that's precisely the question that I'll put to my listeners this morning, David. I'm interested in hearing that. What Water Corp customers think of this amount of money. Is the $148,000 in a fishing exercise like this, is it the sort of amount that we should all just put down to regular business dealings, or should we be concerned about it?
Yeah, look, and I think, rebranding is a big thing. The ministers should have been asked first up, and why they do it is beyond me. They're, as I say, complete monopoly. It doesn't matter what we think about them, Liam. They're the only people we can get our water from unless we've got a rainwater tank. So, a great question to ask.
And just finally, before you go, I mean, if you had to rebrand them, let's just try, humour me for a moment. Let's try to get some value out of that $148,000 on the radio. If you had to rebrand them, what would you do? What would you change the name or something, or how would you?
Oh, it'd be fascinating, wouldn't it? Who knows? They certainly could be creative, I'm sure. And if they spend enough money, they'd get a creative suggestion. But look, the public don't want them to be creative. They want safe and they want cheap water. And certainly on the cheap part, we're not getting that from Water Corp.
David, can I ask you finally, will you or do you intend to be asking any questions about this in Parliament this week on the matter?
Look, absolutely, and we'll follow up with questions. This is our last week of Parliament before what they call the winter break, so very fascinated to hear from the Minister exactly what Water Corporation planned. Yeah,
I'll be very interested to hear the response. Thanks very much for your time this morning.
Yeah, cheers, Liam. I really appreciate the call.
David Honey there. He's the Shadow Water Minister, David Kelly's counterpart And Dave Kelly obviously not available to come and tell you what the situation is using $148,000 of your money.